Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Fox. I hope you're doing okay. And I wanted to give you something to do this week. I know it's all extra credit until next week, when we officially start our remote learning. But, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff to learn, and I want you to keep going. So this week, our theme is how the heck do we know how old the Earth is? I keep saying it's 4.6 billion years, but how do scientists really know that? Anyway, so in order for you to understand this, I've kind of made up a story about this character called Halfway Harry. Halfway Harry takes a day to do half of anything that he has left to do. So basically, each day, Harry gets up, he eats half of his breakfast, he does half of his work during the day. If he reads a book, he reads half of a book. If he eats something, he eats half of it, or whatever it is. And then the next day, he not only does half of everything he starts, but he only does half of anything else that he has already started but didn't finish from the day before. So let's say he's reading a book and he's read half the book on one day, but then the next day he reads half of the half that was left to read. So let me try to help you understand this. I'm going to write down this rectangle. This rectangle represents that book. So on day one, which I'll put down here in green, on day one, he reads half the book. So let's say this is about half. So there's him reading the book, reading the book, reading the book. And this is on day one. Okay, day one, he reads half that book. Day two, which we'll do in blue, he reads half of what was left. So on day two, he reads half of the remaining pages in his book. On day three, what do you think? You got it. Day three, he reads half of what's remaining there. Okay? So, day three. Okay, do you get the idea? So Halfway Harry is this dude who just always just does half of whatever he has left to do. Okay? All right, so let's get to it. Let's do an example with the book, but let's be a little bit more specific about it. Okay? All right. Let me adjust this so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so let's see. I don't really have a color pink, I don't think, on here. Anyway, I can't find it. So I'm going to use yellow for day three, okay? Just remember that the pink is going to be yellow for today. Yeah. So what I'll do is I can highlight it. I think, let me just try that. If I highlight this, yeah, this will be yellow for today. Okay. All right. So here we go. Day one. So let's say this book is 240 pages long. 240 pages long. So that means half the book is 120 pages. Okay? So on the first day, that's what he's going to do. He's going to read half the book. half of the book, which is on day 1. And we're talking right here. He's going to read 120 pages on day 1. Okay? And on day 2, he reads half. Again, just like we did before, right? And this is day 2. Now, if you think about the pages in the book, page 1 to 120 would be the first 120 pages, or half of the 240-page book. So therefore, if he reads half again, so this must be worth 60 pages, right? So if the first half of the book is 120 pages, the second half of the book must be 60 pages. So 60 plus 120 is 180. So that's where we get this 180, okay? The 180 comes in because that's 60 plus 120. Now the next day, which I promised you would be in yellow, he reads half again, half of the remaining part. Now the remaining part is 60. So half of that would be 30. So we're going to read 30 pages. And it makes sense that it goes from 180 to 210 because that's 30 pages added on to 180, right? Actually, that should be a 181, but close enough. Okay, so what do we have here? This is day 3, right? So the question is, here's the big question. On day 4, how many pages would he read? On day 4, what do you think? Well, half, 240 to 120 to 60 to 30. What's half of 30? Half of 30. Divide 30 in 2. What do we get? 15. So it's 15 pages. So this time we're going to be going from 211 up to 225. Okay? And that would be our red color. So let me grab red. And that would be half of that remaining half, or that remaining part. Okay, and this would be 15 pages right there. And we are talking about day 4. All right, so looking at this color bar is one way of showing this. Another way to show it is a graph. So what we could do is, if we look at the number of pages in the book versus the number of days that it takes Halfway Harry to read it, we could graph our points. So when Harry first gets the book, no days have gone by. That's day 0. And we're basically up here at 240. Now this is a mistake. It shouldn't be 200. It should be 240. So imagine that's a 240. And this is 120 right there. Okay, 120. Just imagine that right there. Okay, so halfway after 1 day, that would be halfway. So Harry's read half. And how you do this graphing is, so here is your y-axis, here is your x-axis, right? And the way you label a graph is the y versus the x, the y versus the x. So the y would be the number of pages versus days. Okay? That's the title of our graph. All right, what about the second day? So the second day, we have half of 120, which is 60 pages left, right? So we're down here. And by day 3, if we take another 30 out of that, we're going to have 30 left, right? So that's going to be here. So check this out. When I get these points, what I'm really doing here is I'm really going for, oh, I should do this color-coded. That would be nice. I'm really going for across here and then down here. You see that? So that's how I'm graphing this point here. That point is there because its height has to do with how many pages, right? And its distance to the right has to do with how many days. In the same way, where does this x come from? This x comes from the fact that after the second day, it's the height of 60 number of pages, and it's over to the right 2 days, right? That's how that point got there. Our yellow point got there because Halfway Harry read 30 pages in 3 days. Now, the fourth one, or 15, which would be halfway between 0 and 30, that 15 would be right about there. And we're coloring that red. And where does that come from? That comes from the fact that that's 15, the height of 15, and going over to the right at the number 4. Okay? So do you see how that it's making a curve? That curve, this curve right here, this will be a very important curve for us. My stylus is not doing very well right now. See how that curve is coming down there? I wanted to show you this right now because I think later on it will make more sense, but I want you to think about this at this point when we do these problems. Okay, let's try another one. This time I want to see if you can do this by yourself. So let's take a look at this. Let me make this fit in there. Okay, Halfway Harry gets assigned math homework, and it has 16 problems. 16 problems. How many problems has he done by day 3? Day 3, okay? You can use a piece of paper or start a new slide in your digital notebook to work this problem out. But I do want you to try it. So I'd rather have you pause, just push pause on the video right now, do the problem, and come back. Okay, I hope you did the problem. Struggling means learning, right? Okay, so 16 problems, how many days? How many problems by day 3? Okay, so let's say we start out with 16. So that first day, so this is going to be day 0, basically, right? Day 0. I mean, no days have gone by. And he's been assigned a 16 problem set by his math teacher. Those darn math teachers. And so on day 1, he's going to go home, he's going to do his homework, and he's Halfway Harry. So what does he do? He does 8. 8 of them, which means there's 8 left. Okay? All right. day 2. Well, he's going to have 4 of them, right? So basically, between here and here on the first day, right, he has done 8 problems. I mean, yeah, 8 problems, half of it. By the time the second day ends, he's done 4 more, which leaves 4 left, which means that on day 3, he's got 2 left, right? So the question is, how many problems has he done? Well, he has done all of these, and there's only 2 left. So he's done 14 problems. By the end of the 3rd day. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Good. Let's try another one. Now let's work it around a little bit, make it a little harder, but you'll see why we have to do it this way. Let's try to work backwards. We're going to be like detectives now, okay? And let's say halfway here, he got the same assignment, 16 problem math set, sometime last week. And let's say today's Monday, and he goes in on Monday. What does he say to his teacher? He says, I'm sorry, I can't do half of one problem. So what does that actually mean? Try to figure that out and pause the video at this point, and I'll get right back to you. You can work it out in your notebook slide. Okay, you back? I hope you struggled with this. All right, let's see if we can figure this out. So it's Monday. So let's see. Let's write down our calendar for a week, and we'll write it backwards so that time is actually proceeding forward in this direction. Time is going this way. So we are going into the past. We know at the present what? Well, he's handing in his work, and there's only one problem that's not done. If there's one problem that's not done, he can't do half of a problem, really. So that's why he's saying he's got a problem, a problem with doing the problems. But yeah, he's got one that's not done, which means the day before, he must have done half his work. So there must have been 2 that weren't done the day before. And the day before that, there must have been 4 that were not done. Now, what are we looking for here? We're looking for the number 16, right? On the day he got it, there must have been 16 that were not done. So then on Friday, there must have been 8 that were not done. So then he must have gotten the assignment on Thursday. Okay? When there were 16 not done, on Thursday, he must have gotten that assignment. So see how we were kind of CSIing that a little bit? We were trying to be detectives and like Sherlock Holmes and trying to figure out this whole problem. That's what scientists have to be like. And we're going to see how that works in to the history of our Earth pretty soon. All right, so let's see if you guys can figure this one out. If you can, then I know you've got it. Okay, so turn off the video. Harry threw a big party. He's got 128 empty cans, How many days does it take Harry to have only 2 cans left that are not in the recycling bin? Okay, turn off the video, pause it, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, I hope you're back after having done this problem. Here we go. 128. So 128 cans. Okay. So the day before that, he must have had, oh, I'm sorry. I'm going the other way. That's a mistake. Okay, 128 cans. We're actually going forward in time this time. 128 cans, so that means the first day, it would go down to half of that. What's half of 128? Well, cover up the 8 for a second. What's half of 12? Oh, 6. And half of 8 is 4, so we've got a 64. All right. Well, that's not enough because we are looking for the number 2. Half of 34, 64 is 32. Half of 32 is 16. Half of 16 is 8. Half of 8 is 4. Half of 4 is 2 cans. So how many days was that? Well, let's see. Let's count our days. We've got 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and 6 days. So it took him 6 days to get down to having 2 cans left to recycle. Now, don't ask me why it takes him a whole day again to recycle another can. That's not the point here. Halfway Harry is a little bit off his rocker, I think. But that being said, this is how we work this problem. All right, let's try another one. Ooh, guess what? Well, Harry is not the only kind of weird guy going around here. This must be his cousin. This is Halfway Hank. So Halfway Hank, the good thing about Hank is it's a lot faster. Halfway Hank takes him only 2 hours to do half of any remaining thing that needs to be done. So for example, if he does half his homework in 2 hours, he has 16 problems, then he has 8 problems by the next 2 hours, 4 problems, and then 2 problems, each time taking him 2 hours. Okay, so go ahead and turn the video off and do this problem about the M&Ms. Hank has a bag of M&Ms with 32 M&Ms in it. He has only 1 left at 6 p.m. Sad. Question is, when did Hank buy that bag of candy? So push pause, struggle with it a little bit, and come back. Okay, I hope you're back with an answer. Here we go. Halfway Hank, he bought those M&Ms. So we're talking 6 p.m. here. So here we go. 6 p.m. How many were there at 6 p.m.? Only 1. 1 left. So these are, how many are left? And here is the time. So 2 hours before that, that's right, you guessed it. He must have eaten half of them. So there must have been 2 hours before 6 p.m., which would be 4 p.m. Which means there must have been 4 2 hours before that at 2 p.m., which means there must have been 8 2 hours before that at 12 noon, which means there must have been 16 2 hours before that, which is 10 a.m., which must have been 32. When did he buy them? 2 hours before 10 a.m., which is 8 a.m. So if he bought the bag at 8 a.m., it took him 2 hours to eat half of them, 16 of them. Took him another 2 hours to eat half of those, another 2 hours to eat half of those, another 2 hours to eat half of those, and finally, we're down to 1 at 6 p.m. Okay? All right. So here we are being a detective again. We are the sleuth of the missing M&Ms. Okay. So let's go on and talk about this. Now, don't let this freak you out. I know it looks a little complicated, but we're going to have to talk about a little bit more complicated graphing if we're going to figure out the age of rocks and fossils and things like that. So we got to start working into a graph that is good for all of these problems. That means we need to use percentages, percent remaining, not just how many are remaining, because we're going to be talking about atoms and molecules, things that are so small that there are trillions of them, even more than that, very, very high numbers. So we can't keep talking about how many items. We have to start talking about what percent of those items are left. And it's actually not too bad if we just think of this again. We'll think of our bar, right? And what's half of this bar? Well, that's 50%, right? 50%. And what's half of a half of that bar? Well, that would be 25%, a quarter. And what's half of that half? Well, that would be 12.5%, etc. And we keep going down half and half, and it keeps getting smaller. Well, let's see what that looks like on this graph. Okay. If we start at 100%, there we are. We've got all of our stuff, 100% of it, right? Now, down here, you can see this would be meaning one of the time periods where it goes down by half. So where is that? If we look up on this line right here, and we go over to here, we can see that that is 50%. 50% right there. Okay? Now, if we go over another half time, the time it takes for another half of it, that is, half is left. So let's see what this says. This is at 25%. So 25% goes there, right? 25%. You can read the number here, 24. The next line up would be 25. So that's why that goes there. All right, so you get the picture. And then 3, that little point right there goes over to 12.5, 12.5%. And that means that must have happened when 3 of these half periods happened. Now, what we can do is we can show that we can work any of these problems we've done so far Wow, I made a lot of marks on there. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back to this problem. All right, so let's say there are 16 things that are not done. And one, well, that's not very good. Let me try this again. Hang on. Okay, let's try this. So 16, right? 16. Let's go back to the graph we were on. And where would 16 problems be? Well, 16 problems would be right here. 100% of our problems. After one half time, Now, what was the time of again? It was 1 day, right? So if these were days, this would be 1 day of time in there. It took Halfway Harry to get down to 8. And it took another day for Halfway Harry to get down to 4. And it took another day for Halfway Harry to get down to 2. So there you go. There's 1, 2, 3 days it took to get down to 2 problems left, right? And on day 4, there's the 4th day, then he must have had 1 problem left, and that's when he would have handed it in, which tells us that you go back that number of days to figure it out. Okay? All right. Which means you can do this with any numbers. You can start with any numbers and do a problem. Figure it out that way. That's why percentages are cool, because percentages work no matter what you do. Okay? And you don't have to have beautiful round numbers that are exactly 16 or 24 or 32 or 128. Now we can just be talking about what percent is remaining. A half, a quarter, an eighth? What is it? Do you get it? So let's try this. Uh-oh. Here's another halfway person. This is Halfway Helen. It's the last one we'll do with this video. I'll give you another video later on. We'll do an actual problem with radioactivity and figuring out radiometric dating of the Earth, and rocks and stuff. But one last problem. Let's see if you guys can get this. Turn off your video and then go ahead. Read the problem, do it, and come back. Okay, I hope that you have worked this through. So now Helen takes 10 hours to do half of whatever it is that she has to do. So the problem says Helen started reading a book. She currently only has 12.5% of it left to read. So then how many hours ago did she start reading it? Well, let's figure this out. 12.5%. I think you should recognize that number from what we just did, right? So let's figure out what one of these lines down here means. So 1/2 time would be 10 hours. There's 10 hours there. So in 10 hours, she would have read how much of the book? Well, half. So that's half of it's left right there, right? Which is the same as 50%. After 2 10-hour time periods, so this is going to give us 20 hours. After 20 hours, she would have been down at 1/4 of that, which is at 25% of the original amount. Because if you're going to read half of the half that's left, half of 50 is 25. Well, let's see what happens next. After another 10 hours of time, which is how much time it takes her to do half of anything, we're down here. And guess what that is? If we divide 25 by 2, what do you get? 12.5%. Or, in fraction speak, 1/8. What does that mean? Well, The question is, she only has 12.5% of it left. How many hours ago did she start reading the book? Well, check it out. 10, 20, 30. So she started reading 30 hours ago. Wow, that's a lot of reading. I hope she took some breaks in there. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for sticking with me, and I hope this video finds you safe, healthy, happy, and remember to listen to your parents and keep doing the work that I put on here. I'm getting better at it. I hope you can forgive my sloppy writing, but my iPad is not responding to my stylus very well. I have to get a new one. But anyway, see you later.